A third value of the Sermon on the Mount is meekness. Gentleness might be a appropriate change or a synonym. You know, when we think about, and just in these first three values, when we think about the world around us, already we see that the values presented in the Sermon on the Mount are values that are quite different than the values of the world. Meekness is not valued in the world. A gentle and quiet spirit is not valued in the world. Who gets the most attention? The person that is arrogant and loud and pushing for attention. And these are the people that we pay attention to. We don't pay attention to the meek. But Jesus says the meek will inherit the earth. And so meekness is a value and is a virtue. And it's something we should cultivate in our lives, of cultivating a gentleness. Why? Because Christ was that way. That doesn't mean, of course, that there weren't moments where Christ got angry, where Christ flipped some tables at impiety, got angry at injustice, got angry at hypocrisy. But his lifestyle was still a lifestyle of meekness, right? Gentleness. People could come to him. Children could come to him. That there was a quietness about Jesus' spirit, and a quietness about God, in a sense, where we can find comfort, we can find blessing, we can find rest with him. Well, we should be the same kind of way. I mean, there's plenty of people out there stirring things up. There's plenty of people rocking the boat. There's plenty of people being controversial and saying terrible things and trying to stir people up. We need more people in the world who are meek, who help people find rest, quietness, refreshment in this world. We should also be people who hunger and thirst after righteousness. What do we hunger and thirst for? I mean, Jesus says that the blessings go to those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, but what do we hunger and thirst after? Do we hunger and thirst to be right with God, or do we hunger and thirst for power, riches, acceptability, prestige? What else? I mean, there's so much else in the world that people hunger and thirst after. But we're called to be people who hunger and thirst for righteousness. We need righteousness like food and water. And so that's the kind of values we should have. We should be people of mercy. We live in a world where you get what's coming to you. We live in a world where people will easily cut off the relationship with others over either perceived slights or actual things that people have done to us. But we should be people who value mercy, who show mercy. These are the kind of people that God wants in his kingdom. We should be people that have the purity of heart. Now, again, that's a growth issue. That's a maturity issue. It takes time. But are we working for purity of heart? Right? Are we working to, I mean, I don't want to say work. I mean, yes, we work with God in our purity of heart. Right? God transforms us. The Spirit is at work in our lives. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean we can just go about and do whatever we want. Right? If we're putting a lot of impure things in our lives, the Spirit isn't going to overrule our free will. So we have to, let the Spirit guide us in making decisions about, okay, that's impure. I don't want that in my life or in my heart. Because my quest, my goal, my value is to have a pure heart. Peacemaking is another Christian value. Work towards what brings about peace. Now, some of that, of course, could be bringing peace between people, right? Working towards compromise if necessary, or trying to help people that have been fighting, bring them together. But it's also about helping people find peace with God, right? That reconciliation we talked about earlier. Right? That's a part of this peacemaking as well, helping people find peace with God. Another value is suffering persecution for Jesus. Now, it's not necessarily suggesting we should go out and find ways to be persecuted for Jesus. Some people end up being persecuted not because of their commitment to Jesus, but because of the ways they've gone about doing something. But we should be willing to accept it. Recognizing that if I'm truly suffering for Jesus, not because of my actions, but because I've committed myself to Jesus, that's God sees that as good in His eyes. God loves that. That's something we can be thankful for. That we were willing, that we were considered worthy to suffer for Jesus. And so that's as odd as it seems, that's a value. These days, and all of us are like this, we want to experience as little pain as possible, and so we will go out of our way sometimes to make sure that we are avoiding pain, avoiding persecution. But we should be of the mindset, we should accept that if persecution comes because I follow Jesus, I'm not going to change that. I'm not going to renounce that. I'm not going to try to avoid that, present myself as somebody else so that I get out of that persecution, but that I will suffer persecution for Christ if that is what I'm called to do. Jesus, of course, towards the end of the Beatitudes, talks to that audience, and by extension to us, about the importance of being the light of the world and the salt of the earth. We serve some very important functions as Christians in this world. And we need to recognize that. And so we should value, it's a virtue, to be the light of the world and the sun. I mean, there's enough darkness in this world. This world tastes bad enough. What is needed is light. What is needed is salt. And so are we contributing to bringing light to our world? Are we contributing to being salt in our world? These are the kind of things, those actions that will bring more light in our world, those actions that will be the salt of this world. These are the things that we should value. These are the virtues that we should exhibit in the world around us. Certainly there's a lot more in the Sermon on the Mount, We didn't touch on the passage about loving your enemies. We didn't touch on the passage about not worrying. Right? All of those could be added here as well. But I want to turn from the Sermon on the Mount to talking about the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit, of course, are other values and virtues that we should have and are important aspects of our life that we need to exhibit as we go about our lives. Right? At the top of the list, of course, is love. Now, before we go too far, I want to, of course, highlight that this is the fruit of the Spirit. This is the fruit that the Spirit produces in our lives. So, as we are led by the Spirit, we become more loving, more joyful, more peaceful, etc. But that also means that these are things that we should value in our lives and in the lives of others, and that we should be working towards seeing, these things more present in the world around us. Thinking back to what we talked about in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, do we encourage in the world around us the exhibition of love? Right, first of all, do we have it in our own lives? But do we then encourage it, express it, and encourage it? Recognizing that true love, right, the love that God is talking about, is a love that is patient, is kind, doesn't insist on its way, it doesn't envy, it doesn't boast, it's not arrogant or rude, it's not resentful, it's not irritable, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Right? That's love. Right? When God talks about it. Not the way we talk about it as human beings. But that's what we should value. Those expressions that we can call love, where people are patient and kind with each other, where people are not insisting on their own way, where they're not boasting or arrogant or rude or envious. First of all, the Spirit should be producing that in our lives so that we're like that. But then, do we hold that out as this is what life should be about? Or, because, so much of the world, when they talk about love, doesn't mean that. So are we pointing the way to the characteristics of love as found in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, or are we falling into the trap of, letting the world dictate what love is truly about? Joy. Right? Again, the Spirit produces joy in our lives. Understandably so, right? The more we understand who we are, what God has done for us, the blessings we have before us, right? Our lives should be lives of joy. But are we encouraging joy in others? Now, joy, of course, doesn't mean that, yes, we're going to be happy all the time. But in our words, in our actions, in our social media posts, in whatever we say and do, our text, do we promote joy? Do we exhibit lives where people would say, wow, if I'm talking about that person, one of the things that is true about this person is that they are joyful. They have a joy that no matter what the circumstances, and they help produce that joy in other people. They want other people to share in their joy. So when somebody has a great thing happen to them, the promotion, the raise, something else happens to them, are we experiencing joy for them? Are we promoting joy for others? We rejoice, this great, wonderful thing has happened. Right? Do we see that in our lives? Do we promote that? Is that something we hold out to say, we need more joy in this life. We need less people tearing people down, people focusing on the darkness. We need more joy. We need more peace. Right? Here too, peace with God, peace in our lives. Just, you know, yes, we want to see less war, we want to see less violence, but spiritually, right? The Spirit producing peace within us, that we are at peace with God, we are at peace with other human beings, and that we promote peace. Patience. Who gets ahead in the world? Now, patience doesn't mean sit back and do nothing, but it does carry with it the idea of waiting. We don't want to wait. We want things now. Right? Our culture is, socialized us to want things now, right? Not wait, not put off some things until a better time. Not encourage people to have, again, that quietness of spirit, that, I will be patient and wait on God. I will wait on others. Right? That if somebody, if I think somebody needs to be at a specific position in life now, right? You should be over that. I'm going to be patient with that person. I'm going to be patient with myself. I'm going to be patient with God. I'm going to be patient with the slow teller at the bank, the slow person at the DMV, the person in front of me in line who is rifling through their bag, their briefcase, their purse, whatever, that can't find the exact change that they're looking for. I'm going to be patient. I'm going to encourage people to be patient as well. I'm going to promote patience because I value it. That's something that is very important for me, is for patience to exist. Kindness. Kindness, like all these, are things that we need to see more and more in our lives. And so I should be exhibiting that, demonstrating to people that this is something I value. This is something that's important. Now, some versions of the fruit of the Spirit, some translations would have goodness after kindness, and other versions would have generosity. Both, of course, I think are Christian virtues, Christian values. We should value generosity, value giving to others. So whether this is appropriate translation or not, it is a Christian value, that we are generous towards others. And it is a value that the Spirit produces within us. It is a fruit of the Spirit, whether it is specifically what Paul meant or not. Faithfulness. I'm going to be loyal to people. I'm going to value loyalty. Now, if that loyalty is betrayed, of course, then I'm going to be patient, I'm going to be kind, I'm going to be, some of those other things. But I'm going to encourage faithfulness. I'm going to be a faithful person, both to God and to others, but I'm also going to promote faithfulness as something valuable in people's lives. Whether that, again, is to God or to other relationships, human relationships, or contracts, or commitment to equality, in housing, right, all sorts of things we could say, right, where we're talking about faithfulness and loyalty. Faithfulness to the law, right? So the law says this, and so you need to treat that person this way because that's the law. So I'm going to be faithful to that. Again, if it's an illegal law, or not an illegal law, an immoral law, that's another issue. But we're talking here about faithfulness, encouraging faithfulness.